Welcome to WinCAMS webinar number 10. Today we're talking about the year-end procedure. So WinCAMS is organized into fiscal year databases. So you notice that when you sign on, you have a username and login, and then you have, and then you can select a fiscal year. So if your fiscal year is if it crosses over the calendar year, like in California or Oregon or most of the country actually, that it we'll call it like 2021. That's where we're coming up on right now. If your fiscal year matches the calendar year, then it's, well, that didn't sound right, 20-21. And if your fiscal year matches the calendar year, like in Washington, then we'll actually just call it 2021, 2021. For that year. And that doesn't mean you can't log into other years. That doesn't mean other years are off limits to you, although there are some ways to enforce that. But it just means that's your default year, and then you can log into another year. You can even have 2 years open at the same time, and there will be a little indicator at the bottom that says, warning, you're in a prior fiscal year or a future fiscal year. And so I've kind of put together a little outline here that you should see on your screen. Basically, there are 3, maybe 4 main steps. First, we're going to create our database. It's a teeny bit technical on the SQL side. Then there are 3 tabs on the year-end procedure screen, and we'll do a set up our new year. Then there's an initial ledger transfer phase. Then usually for most people, there is a section there for, it might be a week, it might be a month, it sometimes is 6 months, right? I know Fresno County right now is interested in updating their divisions or redivisionalizing themselves. So what they're doing is they want to start it at the beginning of a fiscal year. And so they contacted me and said, can we open up our fiscal year early? And I said, of course you can. So you can open up your fiscal year, your next year, 3 months early, 6 months early, or whatever, and just have a longer transition period. And you just need to be thoughtful about when you're in that transition period and there is data entry going on in 2 years. What's really tends to be going on is that there's actual data entry going on in the future fiscal year, the new fiscal year, and then there's posting and reconciliation and perhaps some adjustments going on in the old fiscal year. And then when you're ready to kind of finalize things, which is really not the right word, because as you can see in 5B here, you can do it more than once in most modules. Then we're going to run the final ledger transfer, and I'll explain what's different about that from an initial ledger transfer. Okay, so let me try to switch what you can see here. Let's do monitor 1. Okay, so the first step is we're going to create an SQL database. We will do this for you if we have access and authority. Okay, so and our goal is to do that at least 1 month in advance. If you need us to do it earlier, we are happy to do so. Some of you, we don't have access to your server or the authority to create databases or things like that, so we just can't. We're happy to help. We have documentation on this, but many of you, your IT knows how to do it. If you would like us to even take a greater role in your management of patches and databases and maybe even discussing backup strategies with you, things like that, we are happy to do so, and we have an enhanced maintenance agreement called an ISM that we can turn you on to. But mostly, Brian in our IT will go through all the July 1 clients, really right now, this month, preparing for June 1, and create the database for you so that it's ready to go, so that you can do what you need to do within WinCAMS. Because the one thing that we can't do from within WinCAMS is create the SQL database and set the security, okay? That is not something that we can assume that the WinCAMS, what the user authority, the user role that WinCAMS uses and is set up for WinCAMS for you to connect to your SQL database is it may have that authority, but we don't assume that it has that authority. So there's no button in WinCAMS to create the database. So what's going to happen is I'll just show you what he does real quick, or what your IT does. You go into it's currently called SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, so you can see here you won't have nearly this many databases. As you can see, we have a lot of your databases. And what I'm going to do is let's see here. So I'm going to use CSC. Yours is going to be the 3-letter code for your organization. So, for instance, CHE is Chelan County, Washington. DES is Deschutes County, Oregon. You probably all know your that's what we call you. And then the 4-digit year afterward is the year. If your fiscal year crosses a calendar year, then the year indicates it's the second one. So if you are if let's just say for next year, if you're talking about the year that's starting in July, that goes the second half of 21 and the first half of 22, we call that letter 2022. Okay, so I've already got a CSC 2021. I'm going to create a CSC 2022. So I'm prepping for, let's say I'm a July to June person. If it's already there, you don't need to do this, but we're going to do it. I'm going to right click on database. I'm going to hit new database. Brings up a dialog here. I don't really have to do much here. I'm going to name it, and it does. You don't have the option of naming it something weird. We're not going to find it if you don't name it correctly. And so I'm going to name it CSC. That's my 3-letter code for a demo here, and 2022 because I'm going into 21-22. Normally, all of this other stuff will fill in automatically. Okay. If it doesn't, then what you're going to do, and then so we don't really care what the initial size is. Obviously, this is a very small initial size, 3 megabytes. It doesn't really matter. SQL will manage itself. It's got different ways of auto growing by percentages or whatever. I just take whatever it defaults to. The one thing that's important for it to get right, well, it doesn't. I take it back. It doesn't actually matter where it puts it, but you may want to put it in a certain spot for backups and whatever, and knowing where it is. So these paths, okay, these paths should default. If you're not sure where they are, you can go to your existing database, right click on it, and go to properties. And take a look at where the paths are. So I go to files, and you can see a similar, so we put our databases in E/data and our log files in L/log. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just you probably want to be consistent, and they probably all want to be in the same directory. But if you want to change, be my guest. SQL will find it. I mean, you can spread them all over if you feel like it. So I leave all those alone. I put in my CSC 2022. And then the other thing that I like to do here is in the options. It's not terribly harmful if you leave it at the full recovery model. In my experience, no one needs a full recovery model, right? Anyone who wants to go backward in SQL, who says, "Oh, I screwed up," or I don't know, I had a virus, or I don't know, something really bad happened, they're going to go back to backups generally. This recovery is trying to say, is SQL trying to say, I can step my way back through the through the transactions you did, the edits you made, and you know, so nobody needs that. So what this full recovery model does is it generates a very large log file. And so we've had some people who say are getting messages, you know, your server's full or something like that. The log file is larger than the database itself, and it kind of grows out of hand. So I like to choose simple. I'm not an expert on these recovery models. I just know that that keeps the log file under control, and it also really doesn't matter. Doesn't have any effect. So I choose simple, and I put my database name in there, and I just say okay. All right, now what I've noticed is that it doesn't put it in alphabetical order. So you're not going to see it right here, CSC 2021. It actually puts it down at the bottom. Be glad you don't have this many databases. So there it is right there. Okay, so now this is a database. This is an SQL database that's completely empty, has nothing in it. Okay, so that is, well, I guess there's one more thing. So that's 1A, create the SQL database. Now we're going to set the security. Okay, so that SQL database has no users, it has no roles, it has nobody that can access it yet. Okay, so there's going in security, I should have probably put this, it's called easy SQL sec.exe. Okay, and if you want to find that, you can go to your CAMS shortcut, right click, and open the file location, however that works in your version of Windows. Okay, so mine takes me here to, this is our sandbox where we put our test systems. And now I go and I just find my easy, and you could create a link to this, a shortcut to this if you want. So there's my easy SQL sec. Okay, I run this. It should already know your drivers, and you shouldn't have to do this. If you do, for the first time, if this doesn't come up or it can't find your databases, then we can help you find them. I have multiple server engines because you guys have multiple server engines, and so when we pull your data, we can't go backwards, right? So if you have a newer server engine, then we can't put it on an older server engine, and maybe we can't go forwards either. So we have to have multiple versions of SQL. So if I go and look and verify that where I just created CSC 2022 is on which engine, SQL 2016, okay? Yours will already be right, we hope. And so it's got it should already know the username and password, and how you can tell if it's right is when you drop this down, do you see the databases? Okay, you will not see nearly this many, but I'm going to go find the one I want. There's my new one, CSC 2022. Click on it, hit set security. It should take less than a second. Okay, so this will create the user role that says we know who you are and you have access to do stuff in this database. Okay, easy SQL sec. Okay, so that sets the security. Now the last thing is, now this is an empty database. It has nothing in it except for the system tables that SQL keeps track of itself, the metadata about the data. Okay, so now what we want to do, we want to put it in all of our tables, not the data, but just the tables. Okay, so you can do that from within CAMS. It is actually a program called CABP SKMA, that's for schema.exe. Okay, but I'm going to do it from within CAMS. So I'm going to run CAMS. Very few of you have multiple instances, so you won't see this screen, but I will go to CSC. So you usually skip that screen. Still comes up with my default year, which is 1516. And I'm not going to, I don't want to log into, I can't log into my new year yet. I'm going to log into to a year that I've been using, the 2021 year. Okay, and then I'm going to go to File, System, Schema Update. Okay, so normally your IT, or maybe you guys yourselves, use this, or we use it on your behalf in order to pick up any new fields or things like that that we might add, right? So this, we have a defined schema. We have over 1,500 tables, and if a program, you've seen these mismatches before, perhaps if you get your patches ahead of your schema. Now, normally what we do in our patches, we do a surgical add this field, create this table, create an index, something like that, right? But we also have the ability, we know what the layout of your database is, and so this program says, what is the layout of the database you already have, and then compares it to the standard schema, what we say is our layout, right? And so in this case, it's going to say, oh, what you already have? Nothing. Now you can run it against all. There's no harm. It just takes longer. I'm only going to run it against CSC 2022. Okay, and it's a one-click update databases. Okay. Not really sure why it confirms this, but if you're running it against a new database, it says, hey, this, I think maybe it's trying to say, are you sure this isn't, because normally what it's doing is it's saying, oh, I found 1 or 2 missing fields, or 1 missing table, or 1 missing index, and it runs through, and most things are already correct. So I say yes, and this is what you should see. A ton, 1,200 tables are missing, right? Because there are no tables in here. So we're doing this, we're kind of doing a bottom-up approach, a ground-up approach of starting from scratch and building every table in the system. Most of you do not use all these tables. We want to have them anyway, because if you try to start a program that, even if you don't use that module, let's say you are a health department or a fleet department, and you don't use the roads module, well, your time card program wants to open the roads table. So the roads table has to exist, okay? So you don't need to worry about it, but we want that, we want all of your list of tables to be there, okay? So it found it did this whole thing. It listed out everything that it's going to do, right? And then it just, you don't need to confirm or say anything. We used to have two clicks. It's now just 1 click. We don't really want people to find out what's missing and then forget to click update, right? So it's just running through. It's going to create all the tables, and you can see them in SQL if you were to go look. So here's our CSC 2022. If I go to tables, I could have showed you this before. It was blank, but now we're getting a ton of tables, right? And this is our format. If you're interested in what these tables are, if you're that type of person, or if you use third-party reporting tools, or if you want to use queries, right? You can. This is an incredibly powerful, the most amazingly powerful thing in 27 years of doing this I've ever seen is this screen right here. It's unbelievable. And so there are lots of cool reporting, reporting, third-party reporting things that use this. This is the most popular database in the world, style in the world, and it's incredibly fast, incredibly powerful. Makes you wonder why some parts of WinCAMS aren't that fast, but that's our fault. So if you want to know what these tables are, I can give you a data dictionary. If you ever say, I want to just run queries, so I can manipulate the data or select on the data, and use third-party tools. So if you want to build a report on, say, time cards, we can help you know which tables are which. Okay, so we are almost done with 1C, update schema. Okay, so now that when Sue, could you email me and ask for the data dictionary? That would probably be easiest, so I don't forget. That would be great. Yeah, so there's lots of, I mean, your IT can give you access to well, I presume they will give you access to this. There's, you know, these 4 words, these are the most powerful 4 words I've ever seen, right? You can just say, you can pick any table and you can just say select star from, and it'll just dump everything in that table faster than you can even imagine. And then you can, you know, add 3 more words where something equals something, and it's really amazing. Or you can use Crystal Reports or other report writers, Fast Reports. There's a million report writers if you that can help you. And there's even scheduled reporting services that a couple of our clients have gotten into, and I kind of poo-pooed it at first, but when I saw their results, I was floored, because they can say, okay, every morning I want this scheduled report to run in SQL that they built, and it will tell them, here's a list of or here's some information about the work orders that were completed last night, or the time cards that were submitted yesterday, or you know kind of, and it just shows up in their email, and they can format it the way they want, etc. Okay, update done. There you go. That's all I need to do. All right, so what's next? Next, okay, so next we're still in the old year. Let me move this, sorry. So you can see that we are in fiscal year 2021. And so the next step is now we can go in, do it. Well, I guess we already did that from within WinCAMS, but now we can do everything from within WinCAMS. We still can't log into the new year because the new year just has blank tables. It doesn't even know who we are yet, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go to File, System, Year End. And actually, I want to remember, I should have put that. We'll talk about month end as well. Just because it's sort of related. Okay, did I do it? Yeah. All right, so this is what the year-end procedure looks like. Mine says future fiscal year 2021. That is because my active fiscal year is 2016, because this is a test database that I use for webinars and such things. Okay, yours will say, if you're a July to June, then yours will say current fiscal year 2021, right? Okay, so there are 3 tabs: Setup New Year, Initial Ledger Transfer, and Final Ledger Transfer. The first one, so it should say this, it should say setup for fiscal year 2022 database has not been run. You just click that button. Okay, what Setup New Year is doing is it's transferring the control file. Well, first it's doing some tests here. It's transferring the control file. It's transferring the field information. So we have to know, like, your budget format and the format of your projects and your employees, just the format. Like, you know, do we allow numbers and letters? Are there, how many digits are there? All that stuff. Particularly in multi-part keys like budgets, we want to know what your elements are. Are they dependent on each other? How long are they? By the way, for any of you, I see this occasionally, you know, we want to match our formats to the way the rest of your organization or your parent organization refers to them. So I see it not often, but occasionally they'll be like, oh yeah, in WinCAMS it still says fund department account, but the county as a whole switched 3 years ago to a new auditor system, and so they use Oregon Object. So in my opinion, I would like to standardize those things, right? And stay with the program. So talk to us about a data conversion, and we can help you. Okay, so now we have, it's transferred the control file, the field information, and the security. And it says the new fiscal year has been created. Mostly, mostly it's saying the one thing we don't do for you is your payroll periods. Okay, so you're going to need to look at your new year's payroll periods and set those up. And of course, if you don't know where those are, they're in the applied charges module. Why do I have no applied charges? Weird. Huh. Very odd. That is strange that I don't have any programs. Let me start this over. I don't know why I would have no programs, but something's up. Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Okay. Okay, so next up, I'm going to go back into the, there we go. I don't know why my menus weren't set up. I'm going to go back into File, System, and Year End. And the next step after Setup New Year is called the Initial Ledger Transfer. And I'm going to refer to it from here on out as the ILT. And the Final Ledger Transfer is going to be the FLT. Okay, so the Initial Ledger Transfer does, you want to understand its basic idea. What it wants to do is say, I want to prep you for entering transactions, right? So think about what you need to enter a time card. There's a lot that I get occasionally I get emails from just random people and they're like, hey, can you just give me a demo that I can play with of WinCAMS and like just a blank database? And I talk them out of that every time because I can give them a test database, but you're never going to get anywhere with a blank database. There's too many things to set up, as you know. You're all standing on the shoulders of a lot of data entry. And so in order to enter a time card, we need to know the employee. In order to have an employee, we need to have divisions. In order to have divisions, we need to have some sort of division parent, like a department or an org. In order to set rates, we need to have job classes, potentially ranges and steps. It just goes on and on and on. Bargaining units, even to get an employee, of course, we have to have a payroll period. Of course, then we have to have activities. You have to set up all these building blocks so that your lookups can look stuff up and your validations can validate things. Okay, so that's basically what the Initial Ledger Transfer is trying to do. So you take any module you can imagine, applied charges, employees, anything that's persistent, like the ledgers, the masters, the road master, the bridge master, if you have facilities, the buildings, the departments, the budgets, the projects, and all the project categories, and the vehicles and their vehicle categories, and all that stuff. And we want to bring them forward into the new year, copy them into the new year, and then initialize them. Okay, so clear out their year-to-date totals. And then there's occasionally some other initialization like maybe clearing the current year odometers in a vehicle or stuff like that. Or maybe in a purchase order, making it. Actually, that might be in the Final Ledger Transfer. Bring something forward and then setting what was the current year costs as the prior year costs, that kind of stuff. Okay, so it does this. In some cases, we have specific behavior for specific tables, and I'll show you how we deal with that. Oh shoot, I logged into the wrong year. That's my problem. So you notice that I didn't change my year when I re-logged in and I went into 15-16. So it says there isn't even a fiscal year database. And you notice, well, actually this is cool. So you notice this is what happens if you don't do that SQL part, right? If you don't create the database, I don't even have a fiscal year 17 database. So then it doesn't light this up and it says there's a problem, okay? So let me log into another fiscal year. I'm going to log into the current fiscal year, which is my 2021. And let's see here. So now it should say setup has already been run because I ran it a few minutes ago. Okay, there we go. So now I'm on the initial ledger transfer tab, and let's go back to our outline. So it's really important to understand what we're doing when we do the initial ledger transfer, okay? So there's a pretty generic routine called merge tables. Julien, generally no, because remember, we could run into problems, especially in the FLT, because we're pushing data into the new year. But there's two things to remember. With an ILT, there is nobody in the new year yet. So we can read data out of the old year and write it to the new year without running into anybody or any problems. I suppose it could be a problem if we, in the FLT, because people might already be entering in the new year, but they're not really entering in these areas. And so if you've got people entering some time cards in the new year and you're doing an FLT that's bringing forward not bringing forward, but updating a project, that's fine. So generally, no, users do not need to be out of the system, okay? Okay, so merging the tables. What we do is we take the tables, and I'm going to show you how to see which tables they are. We take the tables in whatever modules you selected, and I'm also going to tell you that especially with the ILT, I recommend that you right-click and check them all. There's no reason to mess around. I mean, it's fine if you want to. You can just do accounts receivable if you feel like it. But of course, if you do accounts receivable and think that you can then go in and start entering invoices and payments, well, you kind of can because you have the clients, but you can't because you don't have the budget revenue accounts. So you're just going to be back in here transferring the budget revenues. And there's really no reason not to do the full initial ledger transfer, in my opinion, at once. Okay, so merge the tables, runs through the records in the old year table and says, do I find the same record in the new year? Oh, thanks, Karen. Karen asked me to repeat the question. Julianne asked if all users need to be out of the system before you can do an ILT or an FLT. And so the answer generally is no. Okay, so I run through the old year table, and then I take each record and I check whether it qualifies, right? Because there's a lot of things that in various cases that don't qualify, the most obvious of which, if you say don't transfer inactive vehicles, then I'm going to skip over inactive vehicles, right? Leave them behind. And then I'm going to see if the same record exists in the new year. And if the same record exists in the new year, and by the same record, I'm not checking every field in the record. I'm not saying does it match exactly. I'm checking the key. So if it's the project, it's your project number. If it's an employee, it's your employee number. If it's road, it's the road number. If it's a sign, it's whatever your sign key is, okay? So does that already exist? If it already exists, I skip it unless it's one of the few modules that allow overwrites, right? So there's overwrite existing employees, overwrite existing vehicle information, right? So if I say overwrite, then what it will literally do is trash if it finds the same vehicle, it'll trash that one in the new year and then replace it with the one from the old year. So be careful about what you're doing there, okay? So I skip it if I find the same record in the new year, and if I don't find the same record, I create it and initialize it. So why would I not find the same record in the new year? Well, right now, I'm not going to find any records in the new year. So every single one is going to be a number 2 here. Oops, shouldn't have done that. Number 2, okay? But the ILT is special in that you can run the ILT for any module as many times as you want, okay? All modules can be multiple ILT'd, okay? So, but be careful when you do that. So if I run an ILT and I've got 50 activities in the old year, and then I should now have 50 activities in the new year, right? Unless I said don't transfer inactive activities. So maybe I have 50 in the old year and 47 in the new year, something like that. Okay. So now I need to think about what I'm doing. So why would there not be, why would there be missing ones in the new year? Well, either because there's an extra one in the old year. So for whatever reason, in the final month or 2 months of the old year, I created new COVID activities or a new activity for whatever reason. So now I have 52 activities in the new year. So those 2 new activities don't exist in the, did I say the new year? Start over. I have 2 new activities in the old year. So those 2 new activities don't exist in the new year. So if I rerun the initial ledger transfer, it will skip over 50 of them and then bring in the 2. The other way it could happen, and this is the one that messes people up more often, is I go in and I clean up my activities, or I go in like Fresno's going to do, and I delete a bunch of divisions and do stuff like that, and then I run the initial ledger transfer for applied charges again, and all of a sudden all the divisions I got rid of have come back, right? Because we can't tell the difference, right? So the same, if I went 50 and 50, and then I add 2 in the old year, and I reinitial transfer, I will end up with those extra 2 in the new year. I will not update the 50 unless it's a specific one that I can say overwrite about, right? But the other way it could happen is I have 50 in the old year and I make 50 in the new year, and then I go and I delete 5 in the new year. So now I have 50 in the old year and 45 in the new year. Well, if I rerun the initial ledger transfer, then it'll say, oh, I found 5 missing ones, and it will bring them forward, replace the ones that I got rid of. So there's different ways to clean up your database. A lot of people like to clean it up at the beginning of a fiscal year. They like to clear out terminated employees, or I don't know what you want to do. And some modules have very specific behavior, like for instance, projects and encumbrances. They have options on them that say, how do you want me to handle this record, this particular record in the new, as we move into the new year? So projects, you can say, there's a checkbox that says whether it should roll forward at all. There's a checkbox that says whether the dollar amount should roll forward, or should it start over each year, that kind of stuff. And encumbrances, we ask, there's options about whether they should roll forward and the remaining amount becomes the starting balance, or whether they should roll forward with their original amount and their amount paid down, etc. So you can run this as many times as you want. You can run it for 1 module, 2 modules, all modules. Now let's look at, so you can right click on here and show help for the selected module. And this is actually kind of an important help. It literally lists out all the things it's going to do. And I like to show this because you can see there are a ton of tables in the applied charges module, right? Whole bunch. And that you'll also see that when we get to the final ledger transfer, that the final ledger transfer does a lot less work. It's only going to update like 3 tables in this module, right? Because what would it, it doesn't need to create the earnings codes. The earning codes are already there, but you can't enter a time card without your earning codes, and you can't enter, whatever. So, oh, and one more thing so some people want to go into the new year, they want to run their initial ledger transfer, go into the new year, and then update, delete things, clean up, or whatever. Other people, they just, in the old year, they mark it inactive, and then they say don't transfer inactive, whatever, right? So it's fine. And of course, I'm sure you already all know this, but if I go and I delete something in the new year, it has no effect on the old year, none. So I can delete a vehicle, I could delete an employee, I can delete a division or some sort of category or whatever. The old year is, this is not updating the old year in any way, okay? So I check my boxes, and I And then let's see here. So we got some options here. The don't transfer inactive is pretty self-explanatory. These are all places within WinCAMS that have an active inactive indicator. Occasionally we have a little bit more like inactive. No, we still have active inactive. It's a little confusing with employees because you also have a status like terminated and things like that. Somebody sometime asked us to allow them to zero the vehicle life to date fields. I don't recommend this normally. I don't know why you'd want to do that. Overwriting existing repair orders. We're going to talk a little bit in a bit about the specifics for vehicles. There are a couple certain modules that are tricky. Inventory, repair orders, service requests. And the reason for that is because normally in WinCAMS, there's a clear division between ledgers or masters and transactions, right? Ledgers, roads, projects, employees, budgets, right? You're not creating new ones every day, and they are generally receivers of postings. Transactions are time cards, invoices, journals, inventory issues, right? You are creating new ones every day, and they are the source of posting. Okay, so when something falls neatly into one of those two categories, it's very simple. The ledgers and masters are part of this. The transactions generally are not, generally, okay? There are a few things that have their tentacles in both sides, and those are a little more challenging. Repair orders is probably the most challenging. Repair orders are being entered every day, edited every day, and they are also receiving posting every day. Or every period, there's a lot of subtlety and nuance to that, but you get the idea. So we have to see them as a living document, but also they need to come forward and have a whole history, right? So these overwrites you can have here. Overwrite really means nothing when we're doing our first ILT, right? There's nothing to overwrite, right? This is an option. You can set some people want to set all their projects start and end to the start and end of the fiscal year, if that's what you want. I don't even know what this is for, fuel inventory module. I would leave it at all. The beginning inventory date for your inventory, generally for a 7/1 to 6/30 would be 07/01/21. What this means is that it's going to create beginning inventory records dated with that date. So if you intend to put in receipts or issues or adjustments in the new year before that date, not in the real world before that date, but dated before that date, then don't use that date. Because WinCAMS is going to say don't put it in a transaction before your beginning inventory. That makes perfect sense. So nothing wrong with saying, okay, I'm going to make my beginning inventory 6/1/21. That's fine. Doesn't matter to me. Okay, and if you do it wrong, then you can go into those masters and fix it, but let's just think about it and do it right. This is for the engineering module, pretty straightforward. If there's an estimate, bid, or contract tied to an inactive project, don't bring it forward, leave it behind. Service request, this is interesting. I kind of wrote this as a sentence, and if you read it, it does make sense. So it's basically saying transfer all SRQs except. So if I turn off all three of these boxes, then it's just transfer all SRQs, transfer every service request. So this is for facilities, road service requests, and generic service requests. So if you want a full history of your service requests, just turn off all three boxes and you're good. If you want, but many people say, no, I want to transfer all service requests except those that we're always going to transfer the open service requests. So if you don't close your service requests, cancel or complete them or something like that, well, then you're just getting them all. And contact me if you want to get away from that, because I can't stand that behavior, and it really stymies my ability to give you good filtering and all that stuff. I encourage people to close their service requests so that we can show them what's open, etc. So if you don't, so we're always going to transfer the open ones, but some people say, I want all the open ones and I want things that were completed, canceled, and closed in the last month of the year. or 3 months of the year or something like that, right? So we'll bring forward a few of the more recent ones. Maybe they're still going to get billed. Maybe we just want a little bit of history. But if you want everything, just turn those off and you're good. Okay. So we can look at the help for each of these modules, right? See what fields are, what tables are going to get transferred, what we're going to do. It's pretty generic. Merge records into the new fiscal years. Existing records will not be overwritten and not be changed. Year-to-date and month-to-date fields will be initialized to 0. Okay, so I check my boxes. I happen to right-click and check all modules. So it says perform initial ledger transfer. None of you have 38 modules. I think the average, I just figured it out the other day, it's like 12 or 13 modules for the average client site. And then you can just hit go. If you want to just do one and then see what it does and come back and do another one, that's also fine. So I click that button, runs a system test. It takes me back to the setup new year tab, and there's going to be a big window that appears here that's going to tell me what's going on. Okay. Now, for some of you that have extremely large databases, this can take a while. And it's something that we're working on, reworking the way that we do things, especially in some of the areas where we bring forward everything, like in utility billing transactions, watching it count up, even if it's doing 20 records a second, it can still, 20,000 records is still 1,000 seconds, right? So it's just running through a whole bunch of tables, and it is not finding anything, which is interesting. Maybe did I not have any data in those tables? Huh. So my old fiscal year is 2021. I'm a little bit confused because I thought I had, so it's going, what it's doing is it's flashing really fast through these tables. Normally it would show me some counts here and say I'm counting up, but maybe the database that I created was, So what I'm gonna test here, let's see here, use C2021. Oh, my 2021 has no data in it. All right, so let's see here. Wonder if my 2020 has data in it. I don't have a 2020. Super. All right, so let's go ahead. How did I screw that up? My 2021 must have. All right, let me go ahead and get, I'm pretty sure I have data in my 2016. Yeah, okay. So I've got data there. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a 2017 database just for kicks here. I don't know what happened to my 2021 data. CSC 2017. Little refresher here. Simple. Okay. Okay, so it went through this extremely fast because there was no data in my 2021 database. Oops. So it's saying, this is just a standard thing. It's saying at the end of the process, it looks at your active fiscal year and your active fiscal year for repair orders, and those I'll talk about those in a second. And it's just reminding me that that's the active year, and that's the only place we want things to be modified. Okay, so let me run through this again. So I just created CSC 2017. Next step is easy SQL sec. Okay, I set my security. Now I'm going to run schema update. Sorry about that. What happened there? It won't happen to you. Okay, so now I'm going to find my CSC 2017, and I want to create all the database or all the tables as quickly as I can here. Okay, so let's. So now I'm going to log into 2016. So I can go. You always want to log into the old fiscal year. Oh, you know what? And I bet that's why I had no menu items as well, because it probably doesn't even have any of the. It's just a blank database. Okay. So now I go into 2016. And actually, while this is running, let me kill some time by talking about month-end procedure. So I've noticed in my travels and as I visit people, people oftentimes are not very tidy with their month-end procedure. It's not the end of the world, but you can see here that your current accounting month is July. My current accounting month is July. If I go to File, System, Month End, it's a little bit like year end, but it's much, much simpler. And it doesn't create any records. 0 records created. All it does is it clears the month-to-date values. You can select it by module. There's not really any reason to do that. I always encourage people to do all the modules, okay? And so I just say clear the month-to-date values. Remember that all of our that any record we post. So if you say, hey, I worked for a couple hours, it costs $100, I want to post it to that project, right? We have posted that $100 charge to that project. That's not going anywhere. You can always report on that charge, etc. What we're talking about is there is in many of our ledgers, there's a month to date column of like, here's the sum of the charges that have hit this, or the sum of the usage of this equipment, or the sum of the issues for this, the charges in this AR client. So we're just going to zero that out. And also remember that in CAMS, when there's month to date, year to date, and life to date, we always post to all 3 at the same time. So it's not like we're moving it from month to date into year to date. We are just clearing the month to date and leaving the year to date as is. But so it's just a visual, it's a visual aid. It's really not that meaningful. But the important thing is this: set the new accounting month. So if I say yes, it asks me about motor pool accounting month. That's to allow you to have a different accounting month in your motor pool than in your regular. So now it goes to August, and strangely enough, this accounting month doesn't update, but it would if I logged out and back in. So I just updated it went through all of these ledgers, and it cleared out the month to date fields to 0. Remember, it did not delete any records. Really, no data is lost when you do this, okay? So now the key thing here is that if I go to my control file, so I could do this manually, but if I go to my control file, my current accounting month is August, okay? And if I logged in again, this would say accounting month August. Why does that matter? Well, first of all, it's just nice to be accurate. It's no fun to be in like March and have it say July or something like that. It's normal to be behind. This is cost accounting, so we are always looking back, right? We're always looking back at what you did, what did you work on, where did the charges go, things like that. And we're looking at the previous period and we're posting it and things like that. So it's normal to be, what is it? It's the end of May, you know, it's normal to be in April right now as far as WinCAMS goes, okay? Now, what does this affect? This current accounting month, what does it affect? Well, when you post, my CSC 2017 is almost complete here. When you post, if you're posting labor, it will always go into the right accounting month. We will look at the date of the labor, and then we will go look at your payroll periods, and we will post it into the right accounting month, period. End of story. There is no option, nothing. Okay, so my update on 2017 is done. But when you post in other areas like, say, AP invoices, then we will default to the current accounting month. But you are allowed to change that, right? So if you, now again, we will know when the invoice posts to a project, and we post to a project expenditure or something, we will store the source date and the invoice number and things like that in that project expenditure. So I can still know what was going on. But if I don't ever roll that month forward, then it's going to just keep defaulting to post to July. Now, maybe I remember to change this to post to what I'm actually posting. I'm picking up March invoices, so I want to post them in March, but maybe I forget. So that's fine. So all that changes, that month end procedure clears out the month to date, and then it changes that default month up there. Okay, and if I logged out and back in, it would change this too. We get, it's fairly common for people to say, oh gosh, I forgot to do this, and I posted my March invoices, but I didn't change the post to month, and so they posted into February, right? So they still have March dates on them. They still have a post date of March. Let's say you're at the end of March or something like that. It's just that their accounting month that they will be grouped into is February. And we need that flexibility in things besides labor, because it's totally fine for you to say, I know this invoice is dated June 1st, but I want to post it backward into May. You have that option. You can pay it out of whatever period you want. So we need that flexibility, but we don't stop you, especially if if this is just staying at July all the time, we don't stop you from posting your February stuff into July, right? That's why we do month-end procedure, and it kind of keeps things clean and tidy. Now, if you do screw that up or mess that up, and you post into the wrong month, we have a fairly new feature that if you go to File, System, and Post History, this is a history. This is a really useful tool that everyone should be aware of, especially the managers and the CAMS admins. This is every time a posting has been completed, okay? Not when you go and collect, not when you just bring up the program, but when you actually hit post valid records, it creates a record here. So here's I'm sorting by source description. I could sort by date or post number or whatever. And then if I click on any of these, it says, what were my selection criteria when I posted? Okay, so that's really cool. And that can be really helpful for understanding, like, why are these records not posted? Oh, and because a lot of times you'll see people and they're like, okay, post February Division 1, February Division 2, February Division 4, and we forgot Division 3. So that's why the Division 3 time cards are not posted. Or people, I've had to sleuth this out for people where they say, okay, this was done on 4/9/19 at 5:37, and they say, well, why isn't this time card posted? And I go look at that time card, and it was entered on 4/10/19. So it didn't even exist at the time of posting, right? Okay. And then that leads into a conversation of how we prevent time cards from being entered like that. Or we lock time cards, or we use supervisory roles, whatever. It's a rabbit hole I'm not going to go down. But talking about accounting months, so if I go to post invoices, there we go, invoices, right? So this went to accounting month 3, which in the case of a July to June, it's July, August, it's September. Okay. So this went to accounting month 3. And I included a single invoice called LP because this is just my garbage data. But let's just say you didn't mean to post it into accounting month 3. You meant to post it into accounting month 2 or 4. In the past, people would call us and ask us to change the accounting month, and sometimes it's a small change order and we'd usually do it. But now on many of these, you have this button here that says change the accounting month in a post batch. So I highlight this batch and I say change the accounting month. It tells me which one I'm doing. The old accounting month is 3. I'm going to change it to 4. Makes sure that I know what I'm doing. Okay, ran through, found 16 records in 9 tables, and it changed the accounting month. So that includes with the accounting month field on the invoice, the accounting month in any project expenditures that were created, whatever was created by that posting, and it now says 4. Okay, so we have that in most of the main postings. We do not have it in labor because you can't choose your accounting month in labor. Labor goes where labor goes. You can't mess around with that. Okay. So that little detour down the month end. So I went back to, I created a database because I made a mistake in my source database. My old database had no data in it. Okay, so I'm gonna catch back up. So I'm gonna go back into from 15-16, which is gonna be my old database. I already ran the schema update. I'm gonna go into the year end. It says it's already been run. That surprises me. I don't know. I'm getting messed up here. So I'm going to try to set up my fiscal year 17 and see what I can do here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the initial ledger transfer. And as you recall, there was no data in my 2021 database, so there was nothing to do in the initial ledger transfer. Okay, so now I'm going to go to my initial ledger transfer. I'm going to right click, check all modules. I'm going to, so it must be this beginning inventory date must be based on either the last accounting period in the old year or maybe the last date of my inventory usage in the old year, something like that. Okay, so I'm fine with that. I'm going to turn off all my don't transfers. If you're not sure, turn off all the don't transfers, right? Turn off all the overwrites and don't transfers if you're not sure, because then it'll just bring everything forward and you can deal with it later. No problem with having an extra record or an inactive division. You can clean it out later, or you can right click on your lookups and say, don't show them to me. Okay, so I say, yes, do it for 38 modules. And this is what it should look like, okay? So it should go to each table and it should just start, jamming through them and, going through. Now this looks like it's going plenty fast, but those of you that have 36,000 projects, even 30 records a second, that's a lot of seconds. So, so that's no fun. So we are working on that, trying to utilize some more efficient methodology to make this go faster, especially for some of our most intensely large tables. So what's this doing? It's running through and it's saying it's merging the tables, okay? Oh, also I wanted to talk, so we talked about the checkboxes. The projects have some year-end settings about on the main tab about whether to transfer them at all or copy them at all, whether to and whether to copy the dollar figures at all. Service requests, we talked about the checkboxes that can transfer your history. Inventory, we have a few clients. This is not an option that's exposed on the screen, but we do have configuration options. Some of our clients want to maintain a few years of inventory. You can maintain any number of years. So if you want to do that, this is for materials inventory. If you want to do that, then you can let me know. And so some people say, well, when you transfer it forward, set my beginning inventory back 3 years and then keep all the issues, receipts, and adjustments for 3 years and put them and copy them into the new year. So I have that history. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, if you don't have that, then what we're going to do is we're just going to create one record in the new year for the beginning inventory. And by the way, as far as inventory goes, I like to do my physical count and enter my adjustments in the old year, so that when I'm looking at total inventory value change and things like that, so the old year takes the burden of that inventory loss or gain or whatever, and then the new year starts clean with the beginning inventory that matches reality. Okay. Okay, so you don't have to watch this run. I'm kind of watching it run in this case, but it's just running through, you know, and counting up what I'm doing here. And if I were to log into the new year, these things would start to be there: accounts receivable, clients, employees, my bridges, my budgets. None of you have this many modules, but you probably have a lot more data, so whatever. And in some cases, so mostly what we're doing is we're bringing forward setup tables for your lookups and then ledgers, right? So this is the cost center ledger that we're bringing forward. But then of course we have to bring forward all the children tables. So you bring forward all the vehicles, but you got to bring forward all of their statuses and the categories that they reference and their rates and and things like that. Occasionally we also bring forward, like I said, there's some things that are kind of sort of transactions and sort of masters. It's a little ambiguous. And then there are things there. Then there are specific behavior for specific modules. So the accounts receivable module, we bring forward the clients with no balances, right? And then normally, unless you have a setting that says transfer all accounts receivable, which I believe is a checkbox over here on the initial ledger transfer. So we bring forward the accounts receivable clients with no balance because we're also going to bring forward any unpaid invoices or partially paid invoices. We're going to bring them forward and expect them to post to generate the current balance. Okay. So moving our way through it. Hard to believe we've entered this much test data over the years. Teresa sent a private chat, but I think I can read it to everybody. She said, if I do the initial ledger transfer on the employees and we are still processing payroll in the old year, if I run the ILT again for employees, will the employee beginning accruals update in the new year? Okay, so remember that you know that when I've run this, I'm going to be in a sort of a dual year mode. I'm going to be in transition where I have 2 years open. And so I know that there is some posting still happening, time card posting, invoice posting still happening in the old year, right? Finishing up, and that my employee leave balances may be changing. And so that's one of the things that the final ledger transfer is for, right? So we know that you may be entering adjustments in inventory. Time cards may be getting posted. You may not have posted your leave earnings for the last part of the old year yet, right? So when we run the final ledger transfer, which I'm going to do next, you will see that it specifies that it's going to update the beginning balances of the employee. Now, but to your question specifically, if you if you wanted to run the ILT again for employees, it will, remember, it only updates, normally it skips records that exist in both years. So if you had 100 employees and you run the initial ledger transfer, you have the same 100 employees in the new year. And so normally if you run the initial ledger transfer again, 5 minutes or 5 days or 5 weeks later, it will say, oh, all these employees already exist, and and only bring forward a missing employee. And so, but if there's in employees, there happens to be an overwrite option. So if you said overwrite, then yes, it will completely overwrite all the information about that employee with what's in the old year, which is oftentimes fine, but sometimes it's not, right? I've had people who said, oh, I went in and I updated all the employee addresses, or I cleaned up this or that, but then they went back in and did the initial ledger transfer and checked one of those overwrites. And if you check an overwrite on something that you already had updated, cleaned up, or whatever in the new year, well then, you asked us to overwrite it. So careful what you wish for, right? So you could do so some people have kind of a process of doing multiple ILTs just to keep things up to date and in line. But mostly it's just being aware for a month or 2 weeks or whatever that you are in a transition. Okay, being aware of that. And so you would think about it like, oh, if I create a new employee in June during the transition time, well, if I've already run my ILT, then I'm going to create that new employee. And then maybe you've all been there, with creating a project, creating a vehicle, creating a vendor, whatever it is. I create that in the old year, and then in the end of the old year after the ILT. Then when we actually roll into the new year to do data entry in the new year, it's not there. We've all probably experienced that. My project's gone. Well, that's because it was a recent project in June that happened after the ILT, and I didn't think about the fact that that I only created it in 1 year, right? So it's just something to be aware of. So what's a common thing that might happen? A person changes something about their employee screen. They get a raise in June, right? Or they change positions or change supervisors or something. So I go in June in the old year and I change their supervisor number in their assignment tab on the employees. Okay, so I just need to be aware that I am in transition, and that if I don't do something about that record will not make it, that change will not make it into the new year. Okay. Now, so depending on how I did it, right? If I'm typing over a description in a project, well, then if I just rerun the ILT, then it's going to skip that project unless I have an overwrite option on. Okay. But if I created a new assignment line for that employee to indicate their new supervisor, well, then that matching record does not exist in the new year, and so it will create that record if I just rerun the ILT with no overwrite at all, right? So you just want to be aware of that, and usually it's not the end of the world. You're just like, I saw a typo in the project description and I fixed it in the old year, and now it's back in the new year. Okay, well, because during that transition time, you either need to enforce an overwrite, or a mass overwrite like this, or you need to, what most people do is they just make those kinds of changes in both years. Or if they're doing something wholesale, like I'm going to go enter, phone numbers for all my employees, or something that I'm running through a bunch of junk and doing stuff like that, then I would I would just be thoughtful and say, hey, it's near the end of the fiscal year. I'm going to just do it in the new fiscal year and let those be blank in the old fiscal year. Apparently, my engineering module is from somebody that had, or it started from somebody that had a lot of data here. So fun stuff. Got to make sure we get those WCC codes. So as you can see, it's hauling through this, but if you have enough records, that still takes a little bit. I have a feeling that some of these other modules will be much quicker. Let's see here. There we go. Finally got through engineering. So it's, you know, a lot of things are multiplied out, like you see here, department reimbursable info. So what this is saying is so if I have 50 departments entered in my facilities module, and then under each department I have for each service type, and I have 8 service types: plumbing, electrical, custodial, landscaping, and then for each service type I say, here's how it bills, right? Here's the AR client it bills to, or here's the budgets that it bills to, right? Well, now I've got 50 buildings times 8 service types and maybe they're split, you know, 2 ways. So now all of a sudden I've got 800 reimbursable grid records. So that's all. And people have, so we also, I should have mentioned this at the very beginning, we also have a static database, okay? So you will see in your database setup, if you were to go into here, in addition to the fiscal year databases, there is a CAMS database, okay? So there's the fiscal years and then there's CAMS, and that's what we call the static database. And we have been putting some more and more things in there, but it's just tricky. It's like some clients, they think, well, this should never change, but some clients really take advantage of the fact that there are multiple copies of things, and that they can completely trash. Like for instance, Fresno's redivisionalizing their entire area. They're going to break down the divisions further, right? So depending on how they do that, if they have division A, B, and C, and now they're going to go to, let's say, divisions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And they're going to change all the employees and link them to different divisions and all that, right? Well, if they do that next fiscal year for going forward, there's no effect on last fiscal year. But if that division table was in the static database, we'd be a little bit in trouble, and we'd have to have effective dates on absolutely everything. And it would just get a little unwieldy in our opinion. And so they would say, okay, I'm changing so that A, B, and C division don't exist anymore, and now we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which sounds fine, except for I've got time cards from 15 years back that are all linked to divisions A, B, and C, and now all of a sudden they can't function. So now do I have to keep A, B, and C around? You know, so it's really kind of, I think we gain more in most cases from having this fiscal year setup, obviously for transactions, but even for some of our detail stuff. Same thing happens when people get a new auditor system and they want to change the format and reload their budgets, things like that. It makes perfect sense. So so there are some more things we could put in the static database. One that has always been a bit of a stumper is vehicle repair orders, because in fleet we ask for, or people want to see a full history. They don't want to leave anything behind generally in repair orders, although we do have archiving options, but they don't really want to leave anything behind, and so they want a full history. So that just grows and grows and grows, and we're just kind of taking, you got 5,000 repair orders, and then we bring them forward, then you add 3,000 more, now we have 8,000, and you bring them forward, and then, you know, and so on and so forth. And so it just gets more and more well, this process takes longer, and so there's some feeling of like, well, we really could just put that into the static database. Although there are some issues there as well. For instance, for people that reuse vehicle numbers or things like that, if they don't do it correctly, you know, we have a system for that, but a lot of people don't do it the way that we want them to do it. Okay, so this is working its way through, doing every module. Perhaps I should have not done all the modules, but I have a hope that we've gotten through most of the big ones. The last big one's going to be vehicles, I think. Well, projects is probably going to be pretty big. So our next step after we do this is we're going to go into transition, right? And transition just means we are aware that we have 2 years open. Now, when we say open, usually it's the mechanic, I mean, the accountants and the admins that are even aware that there are 2 years, right? So there is this active fiscal year is critically important. What it does is it changes the default login year for all employees. So anybody who comes in, so when you're ready for people to start entering time cards, if you have distributed time card entry, where people enter their own time cards, if you're ready for people to start entering time cards in the new year, you know, they've all submitted their time cards in the old year, then I would change that active fiscal year to the new year at the end of this process. Okay, and that can happen normally does happen before the final ledger transfer. Okay, because you don't need you don't need to finish up your posting of if you're California, your end of June time cards in order that doesn't need to happen before you want people to enter their beginning of July time cards, right? So what I encourage people to do is you want the default login to be the one that affects the most people and the lowest level people, the people who only interact with WinCAMS in the time cards setting. So, and then have your accountants and your admin staff who know what they're doing and recognize that they're in 2 fiscal years. They can always log into the prior fiscal year and bounce around. Maybe they log into the current fiscal year when they're entering their own time card. They log into a prior fiscal year when they're posting in the old year or entering adjustments or whatever. And then the other one here that's really important is the active fiscal year for repair orders. This really matters. As it says, it restricts changes to be made in 1 fiscal year. So what we realized 10 years ago was it doesn't really matter when you move them forward so much. It's just we don't want them entering in both years, okay? And I have a document about this that I can send everybody that kind of explains all this stuff and also has specific notes for vehicles, right? So remember, repair orders get copied forward. So right after we do this, all of our repair orders are going to match in both years, okay? So they're going to be exactly the same. We're going to have 100 repair orders back here and the same 100 repair orders here. Well, as long as we are allowing people to, now repair orders get created and edited every day. Their statuses change, their descriptions change, they get marked with PM services, odometers, whatever. So they're like a receiver of posting, but they also change every day. They're sort of like a transaction as well. So all we want is for people not to be creating or editing repair orders in both fiscal years at the same time. We don't want me to be doing it in the same time. We don't want Joe and Jane to be doing it at the same time. So whatever active fiscal year for repair orders you have, we will give you either some stern warnings or some wordy, restrictions on, you not letting you do that. Apparently I loaded some giant Radio Shop assets table to not let you do that so if we move this active fiscal year for repair orders to 2017, then if somebody were to go log into 2016 and go try to edit a repair order, we would give them a stern warning. And it would say, when you make this edit, it's going to be left behind in 2016. It's not going to roll into 2017 unless something is done, like rerunning the initial ledger transfer for vehicles and pushing the overwrite, okay? But if I'm the only person doing that and everybody else is doing their editing in 2017, I don't want to do that overwrite, right? Because so I don't want to do that. And if you try to enter in the new year, like create a repair order or edit a repair order in the new year before this active fiscal year is changed to the new year, it's not just a warning, we won't allow it. We will say no. We'd say if the active fiscal year is last year, then we know people are entering and editing in the old year, and we don't want those, because what we don't want to do, we can't deal with the merging. We can't deal with, oh, Jane updated a description over here and marked a PM service complete, and then marked the repair order complete over in the new year, and then Joe was also creating repair orders in the old year. Well, now I don't quite know what to do, right? Or updating repair orders. It's the updates that really kill us. Creation of new repair orders is pretty easy because then we can say, okay, we can skip all those other ones, right? And then we just bring in the brand new stuff or the brand new lines. Now, we do expect those repair orders to be updated through posting, right? So if you post an invoice that references a repair order, or an inventory item issue that references a repair order, or a time card that references a repair order, right? But the editing of the repair order manually and the creation of new repair orders, we want that to be restricted to one or the other fiscal year. And as it shows in my notes, we want that. What you want is an ILT on fleet, and then you want to move them into the new fiscal year. Remind me next time I do this to not a demo of this, not to include Radio Shop. So we want to run an ILT, and then we want to copy, or we want to move the active fiscal year into the new year. Like, it doesn't have to be exactly at that moment, but what I normally encourage people to do for fleet is you say, hey, fleet people, we stay out of the system for Monday morning, and then we are going to run this process. We can run the process, pre-run all the process for all these, and then we're just going to run the vehicle process only with overwrite on. If it's our second time, if it's our first time, remember the overwrites don't matter at all if it's your first time, because you're overwriting nothing. But if we've already run this before for whatever reason, because we wanted to do some cleanup or just because of our scheduling or whatever, and now we are actually ready to have the mechanics move into the new fiscal year, then we're going to rerun it with overwrite on. Okay, and the reason we're going to rerun it with overwrite on is because since the first time we ran it, a week ago, a month ago, whatever, mechanics have not only been creating new work orders, but they've also been updating descriptions and updating statuses and things like that on existing work orders. And we want that to be overwritten. Okay, and we want all those changes to come forward into the new year, so that the new year's repair orders are as up to date as they can be. Okay, and so so that's what we do if we are running the initial ledger transfer for the second or third or fourth time for vehicles. And then so we run that, then we change our active fiscal year for repair orders, and then we tell the mechanics you can go back in. And normally by that time our active, we're going to also change our overall active fiscal year to the new year, and they will just go in and they'll see all their repair orders and they'll be happy as clams. Okay. Then the posting happens. Right? So maybe more records are being created by posting, like labor records, parts records in the repair orders, different things like that. You really should have reminded me not to do Radio Shop. I must have loaded somebody's data here, because there's no way I entered this much data in Radio Shop. So the posting happens. So then before you run your final ledger transfer, you can run an initial ledger transfer for vehicles for fleet with the overwrite off, right? So now people are over there and they're entering new repair orders in the new year. They're editing new repair orders in the new year. They are changing statuses in the new year of repair orders. They're setting PM service statuses in the new year. But maybe we've created some new labor lines, or through posting, especially if you don't have linked labor. If you don't have linked labor between repair orders and time cards, I recommend that you do get it or contact me. It's free and it's awesome. And then now the parts are also linked. That's not an option. I learned my lesson with labor, so we always link the parts to the parts issues in the repair orders. So if those are being created by for any reason, they're being created normally by posting, then we want to roll those forward, and so we run an initial ledger transfer with overwrite off. right? Because we don't want to update the repair orders. They may have new descriptions, new statuses, and things like that. But we just want to catch any new lines that came in through the final posting run of the old year. And every situation is different. Some people are a month behind. Some people are really on top of things. You just want to, and this is one of the hardest things, partly because it's slightly complex, but mostly because it's only done once a year, right? People just forget, and they don't take good notes, and they don't know what they don't remember what they did last time. And so it's good to take some notes on the sequence of events and the way you like to do it, and the one that works for your situation. All right, so we are hopefully moving through some things more quickly now. We finally got rid of that one. Road materials inventory. Okay, so the next thing, so once I've done the initial ledger transfer, I can go ahead and turn people loose well, if I have to create my payroll periods, but other than that, I can turn people loose in the new year, right? And I can there's nothing stopping people from entering time cards, invoices, whatever else needs to happen in the new year. So you'll notice here it's doing beginning balances. Okay, so what it's doing is it's saying, okay, I'm going to take the ending balance from in inventory, and I'm going to make that the beginning balance in the new year. Okay, and so people say often, well, what about, I haven't done my physical count yet, or I haven't posted some of my invoices where I bought some road materials inventory, or I don't know what, but I haven't done some things that are going to affect my ending balances in the old year, right? And so well, we're setting the beginning balance in the new year to the best that we know how. And in our final ledger transfer, when it shows in the help, we're going to set the beginning balance again. We're going to update the beginning balance with the beginning balance from the final beginning balance from the old year, and then we're even going to run through any unposted transactions and recalculate them, right? So we can handle. We used to say in the old days, if you're a longtime WinCAMS user, we used to say, don't post and don't enter inventory transactions in the new year until you've run the final ledger transfer. And the reason for that was because we couldn't figure out how to reconcile, right? If you entered an inventory transaction over here, and then you posted a receipt that changed your ending inventory over in the old year, we couldn't figure out how to merge those two, and we now can. So those things are not true anymore. And for the most part, posting in the new year before the final ledger transfer is actually okay. It's not that common, but in most cases it is okay, because when we get to the final ledger transfer, the final ledger transfer is smart enough to know that it needs to set like life-to-date values equal to the life-to-date value from the old year plus any year-to-date values from the new year. So if the new year has gotten, so let's say we have $10 life-to-date on this vehicle, right? Posted $10 of fuel charges or something. So now we roll forward. Now we have $10 in life to date in both years, right? And then we receive some more posting in the old year, so that $10 goes up to $15. And let's just say for some odd reason we've also posted time cards in the new year, or fuel in the new year. So that life to date, or that year to date, now has $7 in it, and the life to date has 17. So we got 15 in the old year and 17 life to date in the new year, with $7 in the year to date. So it's now smart enough to say, okay, I have 15 life to date. I'm going to set the new year's life to date equal to that 15 plus the 7 that has already been posted in the new year. So I'm going to end up with 22 in the new year. The year to date will stay the same, and that's the final ledger transfer is capable of doing that. So, you know, there's always exceptions, but for the most part, if you feel that you need to, or you really want to for some reason, posting is fine. So we get calls sometimes like, can I post this because I want to build this project? Yes, you really can. Even though now, so basically you're in now. My first suggestion would be run your final ledger transfer and then post. Is there something stopping you from running your final ledger transfer, right? And so a lot of people are afraid to run their final ledger transfer, or they say, well, I've got this one last little thing. Well, really think about what that last little thing is. You know, do you need to, is it just one module? What are you going to be updating? You know, does it even roll forward, right? Because many things don't roll forward at all. Like the cost centers themselves roll forward, but there's no life-to-date charge in cost centers. So there's no prior year charge that shows in the cost center ledger, right? So there's nothing, so you'll find that the final ledger transfer does a lot less stuff because it doesn't need to do anything with cost centers, if I'm remembering correctly, right? Not much going on there. And so if you're saying, well, I'm going to update my cost centers with I'm going to post a journal or something like that, well, that doesn't really have any effect on what's going on in the final ledger transfer. Other things that we need to talk about. Eventually, I'm going to actually do my final ledger transfer. So at this point, I mean, pretty much right now, you can see I've got a lot of stuff. I can log into the new year, and I should be able to enter a time card, enter an invoice, because all that stuff is there. My direct charges, all my vendors should be there. All my projects are there that I want to be there. So I'm pretty far, I'm pretty good on being able to move people into the new year. The one thing I haven't done yet is set the active fiscal year forward to the next fiscal year. But that's I'm going to do that next. So while this is finishing up, because I have a feeling the final ledger transfer is going to go a lot faster, a lot less work to be done. Let's talk about the final ledger transfer. The final ledger transfer is kind of, remember, it's much more surgical. It's going to take the final values, so whether that's updating life-to-date totals or setting anything that's cumulative, like that has a balance, like leave balances or inventory balances. We need to take the ending value from the old year and create the beginning value in the new year. Okay, and so this merging of data is kind of the opposite of the initial ledger transfer. Remember, the initial ledger transfer, if the record existed, we skipped it generally, unless you told us to overwrite. And if the record doesn't exist, we create it. So in the final ledger transfer, it's the opposite. Okay, so the first thing we do is we're running through the old year and we're saying, okay, I found this shop inventory item. So now the first thing I do is go check if that inventory item exists in the new year. Why would it not exist in the new year? Because it was inactive and didn't get moved forward, or because you went into the new year and deleted it, or whatever. Or maybe there's one in the new year that doesn't exist in the old year. If that's true, well, that's because you created it in the new year, immediately after your initial ledger transfer, right? So if you did that, that's fine. It's going to have no effect on that. So, but it's going to do the reverse. It only updates the record if it's found, right? The initial ledger transfer only updated the record if it was not found. The final ledger transfer only updates records that are found, right? And so the final says, okay, if this vehicle exists in the new year, I'll update its life-to-date totals, right? If this vehicle does not exist in the new year, I'm just going to skip it. So the way I like to think of it is just for me to remember is the initial ledger transfer creates records, right? It's looking for records that are missing and it wants to create them. And the final ledger transfer updates records and in general does not create any records. That's a good way to think of it. So it's not going to bring back an employee. It's not going to create a project, the final ledger transfer. Whereas the initial ledger transfer will absolutely do that. That's basically what it does, is create projects. Okay, so these are going to go pretty quick, I think. We'll cross our fingers on utilities. Gosh, we're so close. So utilities AR, generally, I believe that we bring forward everything because people want a full history of their utility charges. And then we'll see. I was worried about vehicles. I don't know what database I have in here for repair orders and such. So if it only transfers if the matching record exists, I mean, it only updates if the matching record exists in the new year, in the final ledger transfer. Sets beginning balances, sets prior year totals equal to the current year total from the old year, or this accumulation of the, so like in projects, usually we want to set the prior year total in the new year equal to the current year plus prior year from the old year, right? Because it's an accumulation of prior years. So it's all prior years put together. Then there are, in the final ledger transfer, there are many of them that you can run multiple times, and it's smart enough to know what to do there, right? So I'll talk about that in a second. So, and the way that you can see which ones can be run multiple times is they will turn green after they are done in the final ledger transfer. Remember that the initial ledger transfer, they all can be run multiple times. Come on, utilities AR. You know what? I think I might just kill this thing just because, well, hopefully I'm done. These are all the utilities meter reading histories. Let's see here. Okay. Here's our vehicle master, getting closer and closer. So this is the one of the trickiest ones, the vehicles, because you, like I said, you're entering every day, and people are editing time cards. I'm sorry, editing repair orders every day. So I have a document that I can send to everyone. I've sent it to all of our clients before, so it should be floating around somewhere in your stuff, but it's got special notes on vehicles. But even as I'm doing this, I should be able to go in and log into 2017, right? So if I go into my CSC and I pick 16-17, now it's not yet the active fiscal year, so it's going to show me 16-17 here, and it's going to, when I go into a program, it should say future fiscal year, right? But now everything should be pretty much available, right? So if I go in to look at activity codes should all be there, just as an exact copy of what was there in the old year. Okay, so I've got lots and lots of activity codes now. That's what's going on, that's taking this time and all this going through this, right? So now my vehicle master is here. Now this is a parts cross-reference table that I have in my vehicle master. These are vehicle translations for your fuel card lock, things like that. That's one that could probably be in the static database, huh? Getting closer. Vehicle depreciation. So just like at any time, the so I can enter time cards now in the new year. Well, I take it back. My first thing after you do this, you do need, and it tells you this, you need to go into applied charges in the new year and enter payroll periods, right? We don't know what your payroll periods are for your specific agency, so I don't have any, so I'm going to create one, right? And I'm going to set, maybe the starting date is 07/01. I don't know, maybe your starting date is somewhere late in June, and we'll just create those periods. But once we do that, we are pretty much ready to go for entering just about any type of transaction. Okay, let's see here. Water meters. Who cares about water meters right now? So here, why don't I, 1 second here. Just in the interest of time, I am going to tell this that it is done. All right. I don't recommend you do that, but I just can't just killed that program. And the reason I wanted to do that was because I want to go back in there and I want to show you now. So we've updated our data now. Not only have we transferred all our data forward, but we've updated our configuration settings to know that these have all been done, right? Except for water, because I stopped in the middle of it, right? It tells us who did it and when, and it sets them, and they're all green, because green in this case means you can redo it. So I could just check this one and do it again, right? And it will just, most of them will already exist. So if I went ahead and did this right now, pretty much nothing would happen, right? It would, and the counts would all be 0. But if I go to the final ledger transfer, now these are all alive, okay? And if I say check all the modules, okay, I have some difference, options here, and that are more relevant to these things. And if you right click and go to your show help, you can see that there are far fewer tables affected here in the final ledger transfer. And it says, okay, it copies AR invoices with an outstanding remaining balance into the new year and marks them as prior year. Post status is removed and only the unpaid balance is copied. So it's pretty detailed about what it's going to do. Okay. And so you just stop and think about it, and you say, okay, so if we're removing the post status, bringing forward, so we have a $100 invoice and it was paid by $25 in the old year, there's $75 outstanding, so we're going to bring it forward as a $75 invoice. Why? So that it can receive payments in the new year, and so that it can get posted against the client to the tune of $75 of charges, right? So there's a lot less work going on, and it's much more surgical, okay? And some other things are happening in here too. Let's look at applied charges. Oh, it doesn't even tell us which tables, but it says copies, it's only doing the leave accrual balances. So a lot less work. There are some here that it brings forward recurring journals and recurring invoices. Oh, that's what direct charges is. I think, wait. No, it's not. So direct charges, all we're going to deal with is our POs, our encumbrances, right? Because you have many encumbrances stretch across a fiscal year, and so if we haven't paid that contract all the way down, then we need to bring it forward. And there's a year-end option on the main tab of the encumbrance that you decide how you want to bring that forward, or if you want to bring it forward at all. Okay. But we're also, if you use it recurring journals or recurring invoices, then we have to take the last one. If you're July to June, then we take the June version of the invoice and we bring it forward as a July version in the new year. And it's just like you would normally run your monthly recurring invoice creation process. Row materials, or let's look at shop inventory. This is what I was saying. It transfers the year-end values for quantity on hand and average unit cost into the new year as a beginning balance record. Okay, and then it's gonna recalculate these things, right? And it's gonna make, if you've already been entering issues and receipts, it'll recalculate it as though you entered them, you know, as though that beginning balance was there the whole time, and change the cost, right? And so you can just read through all these things. What date do you want your beginning balance for leave accruals to be? We separated vehicles and equipment into two. So the accounting for vehicles and equipment updates the life-to-date totals, and we set the current year, meaning the old year, that's 15, 16, and then we add the new year, we add in any year-to-date that's been posted in the new year to create the new year's life-to-date. And then we take the highest odometer from the old year, and it becomes the prior year odometer in the new year, okay? And then there's also an operational, oh, these say the same thing, but there's a, that's funny, I think that I need to, I believe the operational is what we're doing for the where we're doing the ODOMs, and the accounting is where we're doing all of the dollar amounts. Okay, so why don't we? I'm gonna uncheck all these. So I'm gonna just do, like, say, accounts receivable. Okay, so it runs a system test, and then a screen is going to come up similar to this, but it is generally much quicker. So remember, accounts receivable is just doing it's going to bring forward any unpaid invoices, right? And bring them forward as unposted and ready to update the clients. So it's opening the tables for the old year. My old year is 2016, and my new year is 2017. It's going to open the appropriate tables for 2017 now. And then it's running through invoices, right? I'm done. Okay. And now that one is grayed out, and it says I've transferred on 5/25. So this one is not green. So it cannot be selected, right? Why? Because it's just, we can't figure out how to do it twice. We can't. What if you've gone into those invoices and edited them, or deleted some of them, or posted them? Now, do we bring them forward again, or we just don't know what to do? So, but if we do, say, applied charges, right, and we set our beginning balance date to we're going into 16/17, so I'll say 07/01/16, right? All we're doing is updating the employee accruals balances, right? And there aren't this many employees, but each employee may have vacation, sick leave, management leave, FMLA, whatever else. So apparently we have, and we're creating, we're creating detail records as well. Who knows how many employees I have? Okay, so now this one, oops, this one is green. So I could say, oh, you know what, this is as, so let's just say that this is a good example. So I run my initial ledger transfer, and I want everybody to see their up-to-date leave balances on their time card. So I can run this one right away, you know, immediately after running my initial ledger transfer, with the knowledge that I'm going to run it again, right? No problem to run it again, and it's just smart enough to update. Now, I'm gonna post the June or the December, depending on my fiscal year structure, and I'm going to update the beginning balances again. I'm sorry, gonna change the ending balance in the old year, and then I'm gonna, now with this new information, I'm gonna update the beginning balances again. But as of today, May 25th, we want those applied charge, those balances to be as good as we can get them, right? So many of these are green. I would say most of them will turn green, because we can do them multiple times. And then the last step is to change your active fiscal year. So I go like this, and maybe I set my active fiscal year for repair orders if I'm ready to do that, and then I close it, and it says, everyone should restart. If it doesn't really matter. And then now if I go in and rerun WinCAMS, my default year is 16-17. So again, I want the one that's going to affect the most people. I want, especially if they're not power users and they're not really privy or understanding of what we're doing here. I want them to just not even think about it and just go in like, oh, it's a new year. Okay, great. And then for the power users and the admins and the accountants, they can always go in and say, I'm going to go back into the old year, right? And so, but now I've got 16-17. My login should be fine. It'll initialize my stuff, and I'm in the first month this is a July to June client, the first month of 16-17, and I'm ready to go. And then this, and people's time cards are always a big thing, right? And so if they use templates on their time cards, which I encourage them to do, and if you don't know how to use a template on the time card, then I've got videos, or email me or whatever, and their template will persist. It doesn't need to be in any fiscal year. Same with your report templates, which you should also be using, so you don't have to rebuild your reports every time, et cetera, et cetera. I think that is about it. We already did month end while I was in the middle of that long initial ledger transfer. Feel free to email me any questions you might have, more detailed or specific to your situation. My YouTube, Karen's asking for info on my YouTube. It's if you go to YouTube and search for WinCAMS channel, and you can subscribe there, and I've got all of our webinars up there, and just other little instructional videos I've made about using search, running reports, finding records, using the directories, using the lookups, things like that. And feel free to suggest to me, topics for these webinars that we can put on the schedule. We will be planning a full day fleet webinar that will be paid, but it will be a full day. And I think I'm going to try to do a full day facilities webinar. And then we are crossing our fingers that we are scheduled for our live conferences again. Our 2-day live conference is in October in Spokane. No, first I think it's in South Lake Tahoe, and then it's in Spokane. Yes, Teresa, I will be uploading this webinar to both our website. There's a videos section of our website and onto YouTube. It does take a little bit for the GoToMeeting people to manage or whatever they do, render the video. So if you have any specific questions about screwy things that happen in your specific or agency, or just things you didn't understand or that I forgot or whatever, feel free to email and let me know. I appreciate your time, and have a great afternoon. Thanks.